Okay, we are... Okay, bud.
Okay. Today is Thursday, October 17th, 2002. This is the beginning of an interview with Robert J. Flanagan at the YJCC in Washington Township, New Jersey. Bob is 82 years old, having been born on November 28, 1920. My name is Bonnie Ziff. I am with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I'll be the interviewer. Bob, could you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
World War II. I was an artillery man in the 79th Infantry Division.
And can you tell us how you began, how you got involved with this war? Did you enlist or did you?
I did not enlist.
Well, you were drafted.
Yeah, I was drafted in. Let me put it this way. I started out. I was married in April of 1942, and drafted in October of '42.
Where were you living at the time?
In New York City.
And what were you doing?
I was working in a defense plant in Western Electric in New Jersey.
Can you tell me more about that? What's a defense plant?
Well, they were making things that assisted in the war as far as that was concerned. I didn't do anything substantial or anything like that, but I did my part. I knew I was going and I wanted to go, but I wanted to get married as well, and which I did, and I knew it, and my wife was pregnant. She had a child, and by the time I came home, my daughter was 2.5 years old, I think. I'd seen her twice. So that's about it as far as that's concerned. I was born in New York, in Yorkville, on East 80th Street in 1920. My father was a veteran of World War I, a hero. He was a fireman in New York, and he was killed on the job when I was 8 months old. My brother was 1.5 years old. My mother never married again. She brought us up. I lived with my grandmother and some aunts. Brought up with all women, and they were wonderful to me. And I had a good life. I never went any further than high school because I wanted to go to work and help my mother out. She was a matron, and the firemen paid her. She wasn't paid by the city, she was paid by the firemen themselves. In those days, they chip in 50 cents a week or something like that, and 50 cents a day or something. And then she'd go to other jobs after she finished that, you know. So she was a great lady, and we had a good childhood, and I have nothing but good recollections as far as my youth is concerned. So, and then when I went in the service, I think it was activated in either October or November. I think they gave me a week or two to get squared away, and I went to Fort Dix when I was activated. From Fort Dix, I put on a train, went to Florida, Camp Landing in St. Augustine, and I was connected with the 79th Infantry Division at that particular time. I took my basic training there, and they put me in communications, so I was a radio operator, which in artillery is very important because you have to be in touch with your forward observers to bring in artillery fire before the infantry jumps off, and of course if we see any large buildup of troops anywhere as far as that's concerned. So that was my training in radio, and I continued that all the way through. I was a supply sergeant for a while, just before we shipped overseas, but I went back to the other thing because that's what I preferred, because you were closer to the front lines. Many times you were flanking the lines and things like that. And the colonel of my battalion was Colonel Staffor, and he was a West Point man, and he was real Army. He was a great commander. He was wounded. He was hit with a command car. He went into a town before it was cleared, right before the infantry and everything else, and they blew up, and I think one of the wiremen was killed, his radio operator was killed, and the driver was stone deaf, never came back again. And he left because he was sitting up at the back of the front seat, and when he hit the mine, it blew up the back portion of him. He was gone for a couple of months, came back to the outfit again, and up we went again. He was quite a man.
Now, did you meet up with him in training?
No. I did not meet up with him in training. I really never met him until I was in headquarters, the headquarters battery in 310 Battalion, and the others were gun batteries. Yeah. And I had a Captain Thomas who was very good to me, and a few other lieutenants, but I never met the colonel until we went overseas, basically.
When you were drafted, were you surprised?
No, I was ready for it.
Because you would have enlisted?
I would have enlisted. My wife didn't want me to go, and my family didn't want me to go, but my brother was drafted, but he was into the Navy, but he was sick. He had bad ulcers, and they released him after 2 or 3 months. So.
Did you want to go into the Army?
Oh, absolutely. We were at war.
Versus, another branch of service?
Oh, no, I wanted to go in the Army. I wanted to go in the Army. That was where I wanted to go, and I knew what was coming.
So how did your wife take it?
She did very well. I had an apartment in Inwood, New York, and I asked her parents, who lived in an apartment, to move to a larger apartment. She had her own space and everything else, and she stayed there until I came back. And I moved to New Jersey. I came home beginning of October in 1945. Right after the war, I was released early because I was a high point man. You pick up points according to whether you're married, whether you have children, your time overseas, any medals that you received, they give you points for that. So we were in Czechoslovakia at the time, after the war, and as soon as they dropped the bomb in Japan, they didn't break up the outfit, but they took out the high point men, moved them to the 90th Division, and that's who I came home with. Shipped to Marseille and home on a South American boat, Cristobal. I can remember the name, and the reason I can remember it is because it was a ship that docked in New York at the piers constantly after the war for years and years and years. It was not a big boat, and it's amazing, but it was the Cristobal. I remember it very well.
What was basic training like?
It wasn't too bad. It was a matter of if you were in shape. We had some older people that they had drafted as well, you know. Many of them were released before they went overseas. A few of them weren't, but most of them were, you know.
When you say older?
Well, they were like early 40s and things like that, 38, and you know, and
you were how old at that point?
21 at the time. So I think I was in a little better shape. But
did you do anything special to get through it? Did you think it was particularly tough?
No, it wasn't tough for me at all. No, it wasn't tough for me at all. I think the toughest part for me was 50-mile forced march.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you think of your commanding officers in basic training? Think they knew what they were doing?
Yeah, they knew what they were doing. The captain in my battery, I didn't particularly care for the first one, but thereafter he was moved to a gun battery, and thereafter I had great officers. They really, some of them were what they called in those days 90-day wonders. You know, they went to school, officers training school for 90 days, and they became officers. You know, but I really had great relationships with the officers. They were very good, easy to work with.
And that was all in Florida? Where did you go from Florida?
From Florida, we went to Tennessee, up in the hills of Tennessee, where it was warm in the day and it was all mud, and in the evening the ground would freeze and your nostrils would freeze. It was so cold in the evening. And that's what really opened my eyes to the things, having grown up in the North, I never realized how it was in the South, about the bigotry, the blacks having to ride in the back of the bus and couldn't go into restaurants and things like that. And when I went to Tennessee, it opened my eyes. We would be in the hills, and when they would feed you, you would have a mess kit, and when you were finished with everything, you put it into a big barrel. They called it a slop barrel. And there would be 8, 9, 10 children with their feet wrapped in rags and things like that. And a young mother, about 16 years old, with hardly any clothing, they'd come and take that barrel. You couldn't feed the children. I think that was mentioned here before, if I'm not mistaken. You couldn't feed anybody. You weren't allowed to do that. But they would come and take the slop barrels. And I couldn't believe that in the United States that we had such poverty. It was unbelievable. So that really opened my eyes. It's amazing. You have to experience it to know it, And from Tennessee, they put us on a train and sent us to the Mojave Desert, Arizona. So we all assumed, well, this is it. We're going to the Pacific, which made sense because we were getting treatment in 110, 120 degree weather and stuff like that. We were there a good 6 months. We had some good. When we first got there, we couldn't start until the sun went down. We get up very early in the morning. People were dropping like flies because of the heat after coming from the weather in Tennessee and the high hills. And so we'd work early in the morning till maybe 10 o'clock, and we'd be off the rest of the day and then start after the sun went down in order to get things done, because we were out in the desert, constantly out in the desert. There was really no camp. We built our own camp there, basically. I think they called it Camp Laguna or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
What kind of things were you doing in that training?
Well, we again went out we were out all the time. We were basically coordinating with the infantry, setting that up. I was taking radio courses and stuff like that. And that's about it as far as that was concerned. Then all of a sudden, we thought we were, as they say, going to the Pacific. They put us on the train, and we ended up in Kansas. I think the snow was about 10 feet deep. So they changed our orders. Well, obviously, they were getting ready for the invasion. So we spent some time in Fort Riley, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, in Kansas. And they had winter maneuvers, which was pretty cold, let me tell you. So, and then we thought, well, this is it. Sure enough, we got our call. We ended up in Taunton, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston. And that was a POE, port of embarkation. And we had a few days, and I went over the hill and worked myself into Providence, got on the train. Well, it was about 5 of us that came from New York, and we got home. I got out of the station. I think it was Penn Station, I think. Maybe it was Grand Central, I can't remember. We took a cab, broke down on the West Side Highway. I had to hitchhike up. They lived on 184th Street then. And I got home, saw my wife and child, left at, she came down to the station with me at, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Was it a surprise to her?
Oh, completely, yeah. I wasn't in touch with her or anything else, So it was a teary goodbye, and got on the train. When I got there, the outfit had been activated. We were alerted. We were ready to go, and I was doing supply sergeant work at that particular time, so they were glad to see me back. So nothing happened, but I think it was only 2 of us that got back. The others were AWOL, and they were. I met one of them in Paris a long time ago. After that, they had put him in an infantry outfit, put him in the infantry then too as well. So
we need to
Just
cut
pause
this
one.
out. These guys went AWOL.
You were how to get through.
Okay, can you tell me again about these gentlemen who were AWOL?
Well, the ones that came down on the train, we actually left without any passes. Yeah, but it was just to get home. We knew we were leaving, in a day or two. We didn't realize it was going to be the next morning, and they never got back. So I met one in Paris after the war, and
Was he one of the ones who got back?
he was one of the ones that got back.
Okay.
Well, they got him. He was back anyhow. So, but he got through it as well. So that worked out. And then that morning we went on board ship.
Your baby was born already, right? Did you have your child already? You've been in already several months.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh sure. Yeah. Oh, it's more than 7 months. Yeah, that's right. I was a year and a half in the States before I went over. I skipped the time lapses as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
But we had time in each place. 6 months here and a few months here and 6 months here. So, oh yeah, she was born. I had seen her twice. I got home when she was born. I think I was in Tennessee when she was born. I got home, but I wasn't there for my. She had a hard time, but and I saw that once more then, and I got home that very night, just before we left. So we were on board ship, and I think it was 15 or 16 day trip, because I think we were on the 10th largest ship at that particular time in the world. It was a British ship. So what they do is when they have a convoy, they take the largest ship, which usually is the fastest ship, and put them last in the convoy, and we were last in the convoy, where we kept having attacks, and we couldn't maneuver the way we should have, so we broke off and went by ourselves, and the convoy went on themselves, and we landed in Scotland. And
how many men were aboard that ship?
oh, I don't know. That was a big ship. It was I couldn't stand it. It was a British ship. The food was terrible. I had chocolate bars all the time over. We did a lot of boxing and stuff on board ship and things like that, well, tournaments they had and things like that, weight classes and stuff like that, which was good. So, but the food was terrible, and I couldn't sleep down in the hold at all. So I slept, I don't think they even knew it. They'd pile up life jackets and I found a spot in that, and I used to sleep there every night. It was really bad. So, but anyhow, we made it. We got off in Scotland. By the way, that ship was sunk going into the Mediterranean right after we got off it.
Oh, wow.
It must have been going to make a pickup somewhere.
Do you remember the name of the...
I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was the 10th largest ship at that particular time. But we landed in Scotland, got on the little trains, and they took us to northern England, around Wigan, and we spent a little time. Some of the fellows were foolish enough to buy bikes and things like that. They thought that it would be great. Well, in no time at all, we were alerted down south and ready for the invasion. So from there it was.
Where'd you go down south?
I don't know exactly. We were out in the hills. I think they let us in town once, but it didn't work out. There was some fights and things like that, with the. So.
How far in advance did they let you know about the invasion?
They don't tell you anything. You just know. I mean, we're there for that reason, but there's no. I don't say, call you together and say, all right, we're going over on the invasion or anything like that. You just pack up, we're leaving, right? Get in the trucks and stuff like that, and we had a lot of vehicles, and you ride on down south, and they put you in a certain area in the hills, and you bivouac there, and you wait until your turn comes, and then you go. So they gave passes one time, and there was a problem because of the soldiers that were there that were stationed there permanently, got in trouble with some of the fellas that we had with us, so it didn't work out too well. But anyhow, we went off one night, and I think it was on the 7th. It was D+7, so we didn't go in on the invasion. My outfit didn't go in on the invasion anyhow. We went in, and that was the start of it. We just kept going.
Now, how'd they get you there? Went by boat?
No, we went by landing craft, you know.
And what beach did you land on?
Utah. Yeah.
And what was it like when you got there?
It wasn't too bad because the troops were somewhat inside. We went immediately into action. And we cut across the peninsula, Cherbourg Peninsula. Then we cut off the troops that were in Cherbourg from there, anything that was west of there, and then we worked our way into Cherbourg, and we took Cherbourg. Then turned around and went to back on the southern part of the peninsula inside. It's all on the maps on this thing here that I brought with me, you know. And we went in and fought there until the breakthrough came, and then we took off. Now, I was in the 1st Army when we went over there, on the invasion area. When the breakthrough came, we ended up with the 3rd Army because they let Patton in with his tanks, and we became really mechanized then. And then we took off, and we went until we ran out of gas, and it was in Belgium, I guess. And then we swung around, and it's on. Well, I'll tell you why. Because everything is such. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know where you are half the time. You know. You know, the rear echelon, they get a chance to know where they are because they go into a certain town. Here, you were working through places you didn't even know where you were. You had no idea. You know. Of course, the officers knew. I'm sure they knew. You know. But when we worked on plans, it was all local areas and things like that, so that you would have to give coordinates so that when you were directing fire, you would have to give coordinates. It would be certain coordinates, and they would fire on it, and then the forward observers who would be watching would say, well, it's 200 over, 200 left. So that would go back to the batteries. This is all radio communication now, or wire communication, one or the other, you know. We had to run a lot of wire because sometimes the radios couldn't work if you were on the other side of the hill, things like that, you know. So you'd wire to the radio, and then the radio would go back to the 105 millimeter. That's what we had, and they were quite far back, you know. So then they would come down 200 yards, and if he said 200 over, 200 left, they would come down 200 and go back right 200, and then fire again. And then if it was on target, he would say fire for effect, and then they would all come in on the thing.
And when you were saying fire, was it mortar? Was it?
Well, they would send out a shell, and you see where it hits, and if it hit beyond the target, you would say 200 over, so they would come down 200. And if it was over here left, you would say 200 left, and
so you were guiding where they were actually
the
shooting.
forward observers were. That's right, yeah.
What was your gear like? What were you carrying when you?
You carried practically nothing. I got to a point I carried nothing. All I had was you have a cup that's on your belt, and when we got back to the headquarters where we were, because I was in the headquarters battery. You came with a cup, and you were lucky if they were still feeding. They'd try and save things when you got back. You never got back some days, sometimes for 2 days, 3 days, and things like that. And they would put potatoes or whatever they had in it, and you'd go back with that same thing, and if they had dessert, either that, they'd put it in the same thing, you'd eat it all at once, you know, and stuff like that. And that's the way it was, because there was no...
Now, for the most part, where were you sleeping? What were your quarters?
Slept on the ground. There were no quarters. Later on, when we got into Germany and stuff like that, we took over some homes and things. And the German people at that time were very good to us after it was, you know, and then they bring you in. Once in a while, you get a chance to sleep in a bed. Very seldom, though. And you weren't supposed to. But you know, I never thought of it. When I left the service, I put everything behind me. I did the same with my son. I had a son who left college and joined up for Vietnam. And he was hit twice. Has 2 Bronze Stars, got the Vietnamese medal, and called me up. He says, "Dad, I got hit again." He said, "I'm not going to try. Every time I want to take a leave, I get hit." I said, "I'll meet you in Hawaii." My wife and I went to Hawaii, and we met him. He only had, I want to get him offline. He made it, so, and he's very successful in life. He's retired now as well, you know, so, but when I think of it now, because my wife has gone now for 16 years, over 16 years, so I've been alone, and I have had 3 children. My oldest was the one that was born while I was in the service, was a girl. Had 2 boys after I came back. They're all retired now, and all doing very well. I had 8 grandchildren, and I have 4 great-grandchildren right now, with 1 due November 2nd. That'll make 5 great-grandchildren these are now. And another one due next May. I'll have 6 great-grandchildren if I can make it that long. But, so.
Did you do anything for luck while you were, I mean,
Luck?
you were so close to the action, yeah. No.
Sometimes you know, when you're going looking and you're forward observing, most forward observers, you're flanking the lines. If you want to be able to see what's going on, you're not on the right on the field of battle, but you try and flank so that you can see where they are, so you can get direct hits, things like that. And then you have high places that you have to attain, and then they counterattack, and you know, and things like that. It's just it's hard to explain, and when you're at a soldier's level, not on a officer's level, you don't see the things that they see, you know. So it's just, it goes on. You do what you're told, you know. We had people that broke down, that couldn't make it, that fell apart.
What would happen to them if they fell apart?
Well, I remember after the colonel came back, we went forward, and we had a problem, and he was a wireman. In other words, when the shells come in, they can cut the wires, and then you can't communicate with the rear. So.
Don't worry
all right.
You gotta ignore it. I know, he said. I was going to say, did you get any R&R while you were there? Did you get to?
Yeah, not very. We were 127 days in constant battle without any. Yeah, some of it was with when the breakthrough came. You know, it wasn't too much. When we got to Paris, we were supposed to take Paris, I think, and they changed our orders, I think, and the 4th Division took Paris. And what they did, they assigned us, our infantry division, to go over the Seine River, to be the first thing over there. They called it a thumb. And we went over and held over there. There was a lot of air raids. The German planes went too far from us, you know, and stuff. But we held a position over the Seine so that we had a jump-off point. And then the 4th Division and went into Paris. Then after a week or so, then we broke out and started again, you know. And that was the entree for crossing the Seine. It had all been attained. So we were the first to cross the Seine. We were the first to the Rhine, I think, in Alsace-Lorraine. That's another area. And we crossed the Rhine way up with the 9th Army after leaving the 7th Army. We went from one place to another. It was amazing. We fought through the forest, the Hurtgen forest.
Did you ever have occasion to use you didn't have a rifle, or did you have?
I had a carbine.
Yeah. Did you have occasion to fight, to actually shoot?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
When you were coming around for reconnaissance, or were you actually?
Yeah. Fired a few times there. But,
what was the worst battle you were in?
when the colonel came back, we were taking a high position. I think it was in Alsace-Lorraine, around Luneville. And that's basically where we were when the breakthrough came, the German breakthrough came. But the German breakthrough much further to the east, but this was the Rhine River, way over by Strasbourg. That's way in the western portion of Germany, and it was around Luneville, and that was the area where it would be French, and then it would be taken over by the Germans. So there was a real mixture of people there, Alsace-Lorraine, and the people were very nice to us, you know. But I think they had a diversionary attack over here when they broke through, and I figured if they broke through, these things, if they got through here, would also cut off. I guess that was their thing, and they would meet eventually, you know. The Germans, this is, and so there was high ground to be taken, and we would days there as far as that was concerned. My colonel was back on the thing, and we had the command car there, but we had to send wiremen out to run wire because we couldn't get the communications back to the guns, you know, the howitzers. And we were a few days in that. That was really, and that was just before we went on a break. We were almost ready to go on a break, and they attacked on the thing. I think the 1st Division was supposed to take over, started to take over. We had to turn around and come back, and we were all pretty well exhausted after that. That was a tough time. I think that's when the colonel put me in for the Bronze Star, because I was on that radio constantly for days, I think. We'd take it, and then they'd take it back, and it was just one of those things, you know, yeah.
Did you get your break after that?
We got a break after that, yeah.
What'd you do? Where'd you go?
I went nowhere.
Just didn't fight?
No, I was really shook then. I was right at the end of the thing. My nerves were, I just took it easy, got myself back in shape again, and then after that, we went around for the breakthrough with the 9th Army. We were way up at the north end of the Rhine.
Did you you said the German people were very friendly. Did you have any special?
There in Alsace-Lorraine.
Yeah.
Because basically they were French. You know, it was Alsace-Lorraine has always been sort of here and there, you know, but they were very nice, and we gave them food and things like that, you know. So, but what happened was when well, it wasn't Luneville so much. We met the 7th Army coming up. They came up from Italy, and that's where we met the 7th Army and ended up with them, you know, and then we stayed with them. But the people, they're people. They're just like anyone else, just like the same people. They speak a different language. Some spoke English, you know, and some spoke French. And the ones that could communicate best were the Jewish people, because it's very much like the German language, you know. And I spoke a little bit of German, a little bit of French, and mixed it in, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Did you have vacation? Did you have a Jewish chaplain, and did you ever have services?
Yeah. I'm a Catholic, and we had a priest come up all the time. Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure there were others. They would let you know there were services, you know, and he would set it up on the hood of a Jeep or something like that, and services, and give you communion if you wanted it and things like that. So, not often.
No, not like once a week.
Well, yeah, there was no such thing as once a week, you know. It just didn't work that way. No, it was when there was a break, you know, and they get an opportunity to come up, they would. So.
Did you ever have a USO group come through, or?
I never did. I never saw one. No.
Did you ever encounter anything having to do with the camps in Germany? Did you?
At the northern end, not the camps that we had were work camps. When we went around to the 9th Army, that was in the Ruhr section, Essen, and this was where all the industrial portion. Now, when we came over the Rhine River, I don't think we had one casualty, to tell you the truth, because there was hardly anything left. They were completely beat, you know. Mm-hmm. And we went from town to town, and when you got to the big cities, it was unbelievable. It was like Nagasaki. It was razed, completely razed. It was just...
Is that from the bombings?
Oh, the bombings are from our bombings. Yeah. No, that's their industrial center. That's where they made everything, you know, and it was just And what we found there were forced workers working, and they were working out of concentration camps. My God, they were like sticks. I don't know how they could do any work. They were Polish and Czechs and all different denominations, you know, and things like that. But I never, the other camps that you're talking about, I didn't see any of that.
But
no.
did you liberate the work camps?
But
You were liberating the work
liberating the work? Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah. And they had no place to go. They had nothing. It's unbelievable. We fed them, and it's when you realize, you know, when you get a chance to take it easy, then you sit down and say, look at the devastation. Look what we've done. How can we live like this? And look at us now. We're right back where we started.
Mm.
There's no end to it. Just no end to it. I don't know. But well, they would kiss your hands and things like that. You know, when they. God, it was sickening. No. And after that, they took us and sent us to Czechoslovakia. And we had a real break there. I was up at a rest camp when there was horses, and it was like, yeah, it was really nice. And we took a group into Paris, and that's why I have some pictures. I had a couple of, one at the Folies Bergère, I had a caricature done of me, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, we took them in on trucks and things like that. And so that was basically the only break we had, you know, and that was the end of it. And while we were there, basically our division was monitoring and taking care of prisoners of war, German prisoners of war. They had a whole bunch of them, maybe 40,000 or something like that. Little by little, they would, you know, let them go and things like that. So then they dropped the bomb. The war ended, and
Did you know the bomb was going to be dropped?
no, absolutely not.
How did you find out about it?
Well, by then we were able to get the newspaper, you know, the Army paper. You know, when you're online, you don't get any of that stuff. So I very seldom saw any of that. But that's how we knew right away, because there were radios and things like that. And that was shortly after that I was pulled out and went to picked up with the 90th Division, went to Marseille, shipped on board the Cristobal.
Came on home.
Came on home.
Where were you on the?
But I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was in. Where was I on?
Yeah.
I was in the northern, the Ruhr section. That's where we were at that particular time. In fact, we were monitoring as the things that we were in charge of that whole area, the 79th Division then. It was all over then, you know, as far as I was concerned. So that's where we were. But VJ Day, I was in Czechoslovakia. That's where we were. And I got home shortly after that, but I didn't get any big parade. I came into Fort Patrick Henry in Virginia, fed by a bunch of German prisoners that we had over here. It was a monstrous place, you know. And I was discharged in no time at all. I don't know. I came up to Dixon, got my discharge. Got to New York, took a subway up by myself with my pack over my back, duffel bag over my back, and that was it. Yeah.
Did your wife know you were coming home?
No, didn't know. She didn't know. Rang the doorbell, she opened it. You know, it's a sad thing, and when you're away 3 years like that, and people were away a lot longer than me, and I have no complaints because I was never really wounded, you know. I was very fortunate. It's like starting all over. We were strangers, even though we communicated, you know. There was times overseas that I couldn't write for a long time, you know, and things like that. And then I'd get my letters all at once, but it was like we were complete strangers, you know. And then again, I had she knew me only because my wife kept showing her pictures and things like that, you know. She was 2.5, yeah. So we built a life, and I ended up in 1947. I bought a house in Dumont. I found a house. There weren't any homes being built. You know, they hadn't even started building then. Stayed there for 6 years. My brother was getting married. He came in with me. I got a 2-family house, brand new, 10 rooms. And after 6 years, we parted. And I bought again, and brought my family up here. So, and that's the way it went. It was a great experience.
Did you think it was the war to end all wars?
I did at that time. That's what they claimed, you know. What, 6 or 7 years later, we're back in Korea? It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Did you get any assistance? Did you use the GI Bill at all to go back to school, or?
No. No, I went right to work. I should have. I really should have. But I was just, what I used it for was a house.
And how did that help you to buy the house?
4% interest.
Oh, that's good. You can use that today, right? Although it's close today.
It's close today, is right. Yeah, that's right.
Did you have money saved then from your service?
I did, yes, yeah.
What were your wages like then?
Oh, the wages were very low. But again, everything is relative. It's completely relative, you know. The wages were very low in those days.
But you couldn't spend any anyway while you were there.
No. The wages in the Army? Oh, I sent it all home. I sent everything home to my wife. I took nothing. You didn't need anything. There wasn't any need for any money, you know. I gambled a little on board ship coming over, you know, made a few bucks and sent it home. And
you guys were in charge of the German prisoner of war. What was, you said you were in charge of some of the German prisoners of war in the Alsace area. How were you involved with that?
I don't know, because I had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
That was basically, I think, was the infantry and the rest of it. I was really in a rest camp. And it was a beautiful place along a river, and they had horses, and they made ice cream there. And they'd send the fellas into the...
Attention, senior adult members. Cantor Biddleman will begin his program in room 200 momentarily.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
You've gone to the archive.
Yeah, yeah. And they would send 4 or 5 in from my outfit to this rest camp, you know, and they'd be there for a few days, then they'd go back again. I stayed there for some time, so it was good. That's what I say. I got that trip into Paris, and it was at least it was a letdown, yeah, and gave me a chance to get back on my feet again, you know. But it's an exhausting type thing, you know, because you live from day to day. You never know what's going to happen. You sleep wherever you can, and that's what it is, you know. Sometimes you get into a barn. Times we were laid out along a railroad. We heard some noises, and we picked up 5 Germans trying to get back through the lines again. They had more food than we did. They had eggs and everything else. And they were ready. They were ready to surrender, you know. So, but that's because after a time, there were no lines because you went so fast. You were bypassing everything. You didn't know where you were, so you had to be careful all the time. You know, but,
have you ever gone back afterwards?
no, never went back. And I never thought about it again either until you people brought it up to me.
What did you do after
That's
the war?
when
What was your work after you?
I went to work. I went back to Western Electric. And I was in New York at that time, and I ran a department for a couple of years. And they offered me a job up in New England or down in Virginia, and they closed that place, and I left there. And the next day I went and got a job at Curtiss-Wright because the war had started in Korea. I went on the propeller division out in Caldwell, West Caldwell, and I worked out there for 6 years, 5 or 6 years. And I went selling, and I was very successful in selling, and then I got involved with the Archdiocese of Newark, and they hired me as their purchasing agent, basically. And that's what I did for 32 years. Group purchasing. And we have group purchasing now, where the towns get together and they purchase their fuel oil and things like that. Well, we started group purchasing here in Jersey. They have it in New York. They have it all over the country, and it's only for on a non-profit basis. It's very successful. It was very successful. So you name it, we bought it. We were involved in it.
Did you keep in touch with anyone from the infantry?
No.
From the war at all?
No. No. I had one master sergeant. I was doing a job in Egg Harbor. I called the priest down there and I said to him, hey, listen, by the way, do you know a guy named George Sartorio? He says, yeah, I know him. Why? He says, well, I said, well, he was the sergeant major of my outfit in the war. He said he was. I said, yeah. He said, well, I'll tell you what. He's sitting right next to me. George Sartorio. How about that? And I spoke to him, and I used to get down to, down to the Cape and to Wildwood Crest, and I always said I'd stop in, but I never did. So. And I spoke with him on the phone. That's the only one I ever met, really.
What was your final rank when you...
T4. That's a sergeant, technical sergeant, what they call a technician, 4th grade. So that was, I wanted no more. I wasn't looking for anything as far as that was concerned, So.
Did you join a VFW or keep
No.
in touch with any?
No, I'm not a joiner.
No.
No.
Do you keep in touch with any veterans?
No. No. Only my son. He's a veteran.
What about your friends here?
Oh, here, sure, yeah, absolutely. Oh, on that basis, yeah.
How did you...
Well, along the way, at my age group, you're bound to know veterans. Most everyone was in, for the most part, yeah. But and my old friends from New York, we have reunions. The reunions they have in New York are not from school. They come from neighborhoods because, for a nickel, you could go to any high school in New York. You name it, and you could go there. I don't know whether you're from New York or not, are you? No, yeah. But, and they were all veterans. We all met after the war, we were all friendly, but everyone went their own way, and that's what you do. I would think I was the first one to buy a house in New York, from New York, so.
Bob wants to know how you paid for your house.
What did you pay for the house?
Oh, what did you pay for?
When you first bought it?
It was 10 rooms, brand new house, $16,000.
And what was the year?
4% interest, 1947.
How would you say now that all said and done, the war has affected you in your overall life and your view towards current situation?
In my view towards the situation, you mean the world today?
Yeah, the world, your life.
Well, it's very disappointing. I say, you asked me, did I think it was the war to end all wars? I did at the time. That's the type of person I am, that I'm going to go in and get this over and everything will be fine. It just doesn't work that way. And of course, we've moved ahead so far. The world is so small now. It's not like it was in those days. But like I say, a few years after that, we had the Korean thing. And they didn't call it a war, and yet we had more people killed in that in such a short period of time with the cold and the amputations. And it was horrible, just terrible. It goes on, and my son, I didn't think my wife would make it. And my other son wanted to go in. I wouldn't let him go in. I put him in the I got him in the National Guard, and he spent 6 years in the National Guard. He went on, had his duty and everything, but I didn't want 2 sons overseas at the same time. So, but, it's very disconcerting, to have gone through it, and then you see what's happening today. Life just doesn't mean anything. When people can go in, put bombs in themselves and blow themselves up, there's something wrong. Just doesn't make sense to me.
If you wouldn't mind, can we go through your maps and your medals?
Sure, certainly.
Was the camera flying around through?
I don't even remember.
You can pick them up and look at them. This is not like fully official.
Efficiency and fidelity, that's a good conduct, I guess.
Okay, we're starting up there.
Okay.
Okay, speak.
Okay, Bob, why don't you tell us about your medals?
Well, this is the Bronze Star that I got. I'm very proud of. Very proud of this. My son has gotten 2 of them in the Vietnam War, Yeah, he was quite a hero.
And they are officially for?
Well, either bravery and how do they read? If I can read it. Or meritorious. Either way, it's some are for bravery and some are for meritorious. Either way, it's for exceptional work anyhow.
When did you receive it?
In Alsace-Lorraine, I think, when we in that battle where we kept going back and forth. I was constantly on the radio for days, Oh, oh. And this, of course, is the European medal with the European, the African campaign and the Eastern campaign, as far as that's, with 4 battle stars. This is a World War II medal. This is the American campaign medal. This is the Meritorious Award. This is an award from New York State that they gave to the veterans. New Jersey has the same thing. My son got that in New Jersey, so. And this, of course, is the presidential citation, a unit citation for our unit for the work that we did in that area in Alsace-Lorraine. So.
Was that just sent to you, or were you actually awarded that by the president?
No, not by the president. No.
Let's go over your maps.
Rolling this tape. Right now I'm focusing on where it says through France, the 79th Infantry Division.
Yeah, why don't you tell us about this map and where it came from and what it shows?
All right, this is the. This shows around the perimeter. Shows all the camps.
Okay, we're through France. I'm down at the bottom right-hand corner now.
Okay, ready?
Tell me about this map.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Okay. Well, the perimeter shows all the camps from the beginning. It was activated in Camp Pickett, Camp Blanding. This is in Virginia, Camp Blanding in Florida. Then we went to Tennessee, Camp Forest, went to California, to Arizona, and so on. And these were the POE in England, and St. Mère Église, or all the different French towns that we hit in this particular area. So this is where we came in on June 14th, which is D+7. We came across, cut off the peninsula, took Cherbourg, turned around and came back, went all through here. When the breakthrough came, this is when we got on our vehicles and took off.
Are those siege battles August 18th, August 20th, or are they just dates?
Well, it tells you where we were at that particular time. These tells you where we were at this particular time.
Were you traveling on foot?
No, sometimes, but not. But generally, when you're moving the artillery, they have to move everything by vehicle, you know. So then we were in headquarters. You either had the jeep, or you went in the command car with the colonel, or whomever you were with you, as far as that was concerned, you know. But not. I was not a foot soldier. Not that I didn't walk, but so. And then we moved on to Mantes here. This was where we. I don't know whether you can read this or not. I suppose you can read it, but this is the how we crossed the Seine River. We were supposed to have gone into Paris at that particular time, but they wanted to come over here and get a foothold on the far side of the Seine so that we could take off from the thing, and that's exactly what happened. Here's the footbridge that they went over. The 313th Infantry went over on that. That was our infantry unit. And we held there until they were ready to take off again. But that gave us a foothold on the other side of the Seine. So I could take that off now, I think.
Okay, Bob, tell us about this.
Okay, and this is what it says. And upon breaking out of the Seine bridgehead, the division started a record-breaking advance destination, Belgium. And here we are. It says, one of the fastest opposed advances of comparable distance by any infantry in warfare. This is how quickly we went up there. We really moved. So that's why I say you don't know where you are half the time, you know. The towns meant nothing. Then again, we turned around, came back this way. We went through Reims. Well, we got a little wine in there, let me tell you. We picked up a little wine. Yeah. Here we went on down. Here's Joinville. Can you see?
Yeah, certainly.
All right, all right. Here, this is where we come into Luneville. We went through the forest here, foresty barren, we had a rough time in here because you got tree bursts and the shrapnel would just fly all over. I have had my jacket ripped, my pants were ripped. We've had guys, quite a few people hurt in the thing. That was a rough time in here. 314, disregarding blown bridges and bullets battered across the first Moselle bridgehead. Oh. There's a shot of some of the Germans surrendering.
Tell us about this map.
Well, this one says after 16 days of rest area southwest of Luneville, spent in maintenance, repair, and training, the division was alerted for the race to the Rhine. So here we are. These are the dates where we're moving right on through. Here's Strasbourg. The 7th Army came up from Italy up here. We ended up in the 7th Army here. And we went around here. We bypassed the forest at this particular place. If you can, you're better off if you can. This is as far as we went, and again, came back again, the Rittershafen, all the way through here. And then more than 2 months after harrying the fleeing Germans through Severn Gap, the division moved westward again on February 4th, headed for Pont-à-Mousson and rest. So here, only 8 days in this rest period days, filled with training of reinforcements, more repair and maintenance, a few movies, clean clothes, then once more destination Belgium. Here we go again.
You didn't see any movies.
I didn't see any movies.
Talk for a second.
Well, this says south from Pont-à-Mousson through Luxembourg over the bloody ground of the Ardennes Bulge through Liège to Tangerin in Belgium. Some by train and some by truck. The division moved into place behind the 9th Army. That's where we ended up in the 9th Army. So we were in all 4 armies now. Passed to Brussels and Liège, ya instead of oui. Okay. So there it is. And this is basically what we did. This is Aachen here, up and around. We were moving pretty well here. And here's a picture of the crossing. We made it in the boats. We had practically no casualties at all.
And that's crossing the Maas or the... Yeah.
This is the Rhine.
Oh, that's
This is the Rhine now. This is the Rhine, yeah. Crossing of the Rhine. Yep, there it is. That's it. Yep. And he's showing you some illustrations of the towns. It was just nothing. The cities were just gone, and the people were living in like they were in cellars or trying to work their way into things. It was terrible, just terrible. And then basically what we did. And on May 9th, Victory in Europe Day, the 79th Division was engaged in government of more than 1,000 square miles of the industrial Ruhr Valley. Each man was filled with pride in his combat record and confidence in the future. And that's basically all that we have at that particular time. So then we packed up after that and we went to Czechoslovakia. And that was the end of the story, I guess. So, but
Okay.
So
all
you
right.
have real confidence in the future? At the time you did.
I didn't know what was going on, to tell you the truth. No, I thought
Time to go
at this
home.
particular time I thought we were going to Japan.
Oh, you thought
Sure,
they packed you up and sent you over?
Well, the whole division would go over for we were invasion troops, right?
And they
So
prompted
yeah, hold
you
on there. Let me
separate-
the cross of Lorraine.
Tell us about the pictures. Yeah, you're on.
Oh, okay. This, of course, was in the States shortly after I was in the service. I was made a corporal. And this is the insignia of the 79th Infantry Division, which is the Cross of Lorraine. And I was very proud of it. And these two were taken in Paris after the war. We came in from Czechoslovakia, took a group in, and I went to the Folies Bergère and had a caricature done of myself, sent it home to my wife. And this, of course, was taken in after the war as well. That's about it.
Great. Excellent.
Has this been taken by the Army?
I can't remember. I don't know how it was.
How many army pictures were there where people were smiling?
Yeah, I needed a shave. I know that.
You're not shiny like you are here.
Yeah, it's different, yeah.
This is great. There's two left, right? What's the other box?
This one goes in there. I
That
know
one
that,
in
yeah.
there? So then
And
what?
this one goes in here.
Did
That makes sense.